Hey cats, it's Ed Midsolski here. Today with a viewer requested video on a shoe that I recently reviewed, the Saucony ENDORPHIN Speed 5. Lots of you want me to put this one up against some of the other competitors with similar stacks, tech and intended use. The Adidas Boston 13 from Adidas, the very popular Puma DV8 Nitro 3, and one from the swoosh, the Zoomfly 6. Lots to get through, so let's put the pedal to the metal. Thanks for joining me on the channel. If you've yet to do so, please hit that subscribe button. Also give this video a thumbs up, like, and drop us a comment to help with that YouTube algorithm.
Dankeschön.
So first up, I've got some stats for you because I know you like them. Now, I review shoes in a UK 11 or US 12, not the sample size, alright? You know, I don't wear that or have it in hand, so it's a bit weird if I talk about it because I can only talk about what I've got experience with, right? All the shoes here have been extensively tested by yours truly. So some interesting results here presented in my Tim Gross style table. The Speed 5 coming in as the lightest of the bunch at 277 grams, though with a little bit less stack than the Zoomfly 6. The Bostons are the widest in the forefoot by some margin, though also the narrowest in the heel. The Speed 5 is the softest in the midsole around short A 23, though easily the most costly as well, 180
Big ones.
That's 40 smackaroonies more than the Boston 13. So first up against the deceptively stacked Zoomfly 6, and it's only really noticeable on examination of the shoes. There's quite a bit more stack height in this one. Similar amounts of width though in the forefoot and in the heel on both shoes, and they both feature a slightly more flexible plate than some of the other models out there. These don't feel too like firm or rigid for sort of easier running actually. That's why I think people like these shoes so much. You can use them for just about anything, though I would avoid using the strimmer. Now the Zoomfly 6 is a little bit different over the ENDORPHIN Speed 5 as it does use two different midsole foams here. You've got that SRO2 stuff which is a little bit more sort of rubbery I suppose, and then ZoomX on top of that for the plushness. I am finding the ENDORPHIN Speed 5 a little bit softer though than the Nike. There's a really nice balance of like responsiveness here. I found this a super usable shoe, and I think I'm finding the upper is a little bit better actually than the Zoomfly 6. A bit more breathable, feels a bit more like traditional, like a traditional running shoe, whatever that is. You know, it walks up the cobbled street to get itself a loaf of bread on a Wednesday morning in the rain. Yes, it is a tad more costly though, 180 quid. I think they'd shift a few more of these, no pun intended. If you understand that joke, then good. If they dropped it down to like maybe 160, something like that, so it's a bit more competitive up against the Zoomfly 6. It's so available, this shoe, as well. You can walk into like Sports Direct and pick one up alongside a lawnmower or something, and maybe some darts, something like that. I think the main improvement here for me is the outsole. It's just a lot more grippy. There's a bit more tackiness to it. Just feels a bit more assured going at faster paces, certainly in wet weather as well, which I finally had a chance to try it out on. I do prefer perhaps the looks of the Zoomfly 6. I've always liked the look of this shoe, especially that R2D2 colourway they put out a while back. But I think the speed in operation's just a bit more nimble for me, and it stays within that sort of weight range that many people would regard as a sort of racing shoe. I think it's just about in there. That full Puma midsole here in the Speed 5 is just a little bit more compressive and a bit more fun, I suppose. Easy to go up through the gears, though I still love the Zoomfly 6, a very capable shoe as well. So it just feels a tad more expensive when you pair it up against some of the other options. I mean, you're only about 15 quid away from the Puma DV8 Nitro Elite 3, and that is a very, very light shoe and a durable one too. So if Saucony can find a way of bringing in the speed model a little bit lower, around that 160 range, I think they would be quids in. It's just a slightly easier decision to go for the Zoomfly 6 with the price and the versatility. Okay, what we got next? This time up against the Boston 13 from Adidas. Again, talking point here is the price. The Adidas shoe's only £140. Adidas are really smashing it out the park at the moment with value. With that shoe, they've a superb option in terms of fit, durability, and the usability as well. It's a little bit heavier than the Endorphin Speed 5. I think there's about 15 grams in it, but when you consider that there's a 40 quid price difference, well, do like the grip on the Boston so far. The mixture of Continental and light traction really hits the spot, really showing superb durability in the short term. Though the Speed 5 has improved from that aspect, certainly over the last couple of models. Fit for me, I think, is slightly more dialed in the Adidas. I've got a sort of slightly narrow foot perhaps, though the Speed 5 still is very configurable for that. Doesn't feel quite as generous as the last version was in the upper, which kind of spoilt it for me. And I think, again, this one's a slightly more traditional feel over the top of the foot than the slightly plasticky Adidas. Weight's a little bit more noticeable on foot in the Boston 13. I think if you're doing some serious speed training, then you might actually opt for the Saucony. I think the more extensive forefoot width here actually means that the Boston's a cruiser, I suppose, even though it has a lot less width in the heel. I think that is one area where Adidas are putting few people off. The heels are quite narrow, but the same can't be said about the forefoot area, as you can see. I do like the nice compressive feel in the heel of the Saucony. You really get a nice rolling action, where it's a little bit firmer and denser here in the Boston. If I had to keep one, you know, for the desert island or whatever, I think I'd probably have to go with the slightly cheaper and better fitting Adidas. And if you're running on a desert island anyway, you want to conserve your energy, don't you? You don't want to be running too fast, right? But it's a close call once again between these two, but 40 quid, yeah. We got one more. This time up against the Puma DV8 Nitro 3. Feel like I'm having a cocktail party holding these two in my hands. Now, the weight difference is quite noticeable between these two shoes. The DV8 Nitro 3 is a little more rigid as well in terms of the plate. I think this is a carbon plate in this one, whereas you've got a nylon base plate here. Just feels a little bit better when you're running at slower paces perhaps. This one more tuned for sort of faster tempo efforts. Though the narrow nature here of the Puma means it's not going to be for everybody. There is quite an aggressive taper in the lateral side of the forefoot. Certainly a bit more width here in the Saucony, though I wouldn't suggest it's overly generous in any way. It's just a bit more accommodating if you've got more voluminous toes. Now, the Nitro foam here in the Puma is certainly firmer and denser than the Power Run PB that we have here. It seems to have actually broken in really nicely now. I think if you want a slightly more consistent and soft ride though, over the footbed, then the Saucony's probably a better bet. I think part of the additional weight here in the Puma shoe comes in the outsole. There's a much more aggressive and thicker application of rubber here in the DV8 Nitro 3. Some quite serious lugs here, and that might be a concern if you're running on any terrain with debris or on some like slippery, muddy patches. I think the 1.5 ounce difference between the two shoes and the narrower footbed are deal breakers for me. I just never felt like I could quite dial in the upper fit in the DV8 Nitro 3, so I think it's an easy win this time round for the Endorphin Speed 5 up against this one. Okay, that's all my comparisons today against the Endorphin Speed 5. I did have a few people asking me to compare this shoe up against the Adidas Adizero Evo SL, but I feel they're like drastically different shoes really. There's nothing that quite hits the spot like that Evo SL right now, but it does require quite a bit of braking up against this shoe, certainly. What do you make of the Endorphin Speed model? Do you perhaps feel that it hasn't evolved as much as it could have done? Has it been left behind, or does it still sit at the top of the pile for you? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments. Very quick musical interlude for you. Today it comes from Miles Kane with a banging tune of his called Baggio. Now, this track to me almost sounds like what a lot of people wanted the Arctic Monkeys to sound like right now, but of course they've gone in a slightly different direction. I'm not sure everybody likes that direction. Miles Kane's still banging out energetic rock and roll tracks with loads of guitar vibrato and singing songs about Italian footballers from the 1990s, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, right? Really love Baggio. It's full of excitement, almost like a operatic kind of rock and roll tune. Got got these lovely vocal effects a bit later on, create this very sort of Italian feel really to the track. You can almost imagine Miles Kane right in front of you with his beautiful Gibson 335, wearing a Italy shirt or something, banging out the tune for you just for your own enjoyment. Go and check it out. It's a really fab track, Baggio from Miles Kane. All that's left for me to do is say thank you for tuning in to today's episode. Hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up like. Drop us a comment as well to help with that YouTube algorithm. My name is EDDBUD and I'll be seeing you